Right now, the single most powerful number deciding how secure the roof is over your head as a Canadian veteran is not your rank. It is not your years of service, and it is not which regiment you wore on your shoulder. It is whether your name is sitting on a piece of paper that just finished its run through the House of Commons and the Senate. That one bill, the one every veteran in this country should know about by name, just quietly moved a stack of money, a stack of programs, and a stack of second chances across invisible lines that veterans cross every single day. And every time a serving member crosses one of those lines, a door opens or a door quietly shuts. And here is the part that should make every Canadian veteran, every soldier hanging up the uniform in the next 12 months, and every family watching this on behalf of someone they love, stop and pay attention. Almost nobody has been told what is actually in this bill. The letters do not always come, the new benefits do not always apply themselves. And the program that could have put a roof over your head last year has been sitting on a shelf in Ottawa, waiting for someone to either sign it into existence or for you to ask for it. And we just watched both happen, because here is what almost nobody realizes about veteran housing in Canada. Most people think of it as a single thing, a one-time grant, a VAC payout, or the lump sum tied to a service injury. It is not. It is a moving staircase. It changes the moment you hand in your discharge. It changes the day you walk out of the release center. It changes again the day your name touches a federal housing supply plan that just became law. There is a decision hiding inside this bill about who qualifies, about how fast a province actually turns the check into a unit, about where a veteran lands on the priority list. And there is one income line, one single number floating around your tax return and your service record, that quietly decides whether you get the full help or just the part Ottawa feels like covering. 6 lines, your service file is walking you across all of them, and the system is built so that you have to already know they are there. And I want you to feel why this matters, because this is not really about legislation. For a veteran living paycheck to paycheck, being on the right side of one of these lines instead of the wrong side is the difference between a winter where the heat stays on in your own apartment and a winter where you are sleeping in a shelter somewhere in a city you used to defend. It is a payment you were owed for years that finally arrives, or one that never comes because nobody told you to ask. This is your housing, your recovery, your second career after the uniform, and it turns on lines most veterans never even know they are crossing. So stay with me right to the end, because there are 2 parts of this bill that matter more than all the rest. There is a new wave of money, more than $180 million of it, dedicated specifically to veteran homelessness that was sitting in draft form for years and is now real. And there is a giant piece of housing supply legislation, $1.7 billion worth, that just locked in funding for the provinces and territories to actually build the units veterans have been promised for a decade. I will show you exactly where both of those pieces sit, what they actually do for you on the ground, and how to make sure you are not the veteran who somehow misses them. But only if you do not drift off before we get there. So, here is what I am going to give you. By the end of this video, you will have the whole map. What this bill actually changed, what it did not change, who it puts first, the new veteran homelessness funding line, the housing supply line, the income trap you have to watch for, and the exact 3 moves to make this week, whether the bill applies to you today or will apply to you the day you hang up the uniform. Real numbers, real eligibility rules, real moves. Now, let me be straight with you before we start, because there is a lot of noise online about this, and outrage sells. None of what I am about to tell you is some shocking new law that appeared overnight to save veterans, and none of it is some hidden clause about to take something away. These are ordinary, predictable, built into the system milestones, the kind of thing that has been rumored for years and has finally been signed. But ordinary does not mean harmless. Because the quiet truth of the veteran housing system in this country is that it will happily let you sit on the wrong side of a line, or miss a unit you are qualified for years, and it will never once phone you to fix it. Knowing where the lines are is the entire game. And before we get into it, do me one quick favor. If you are a veteran, if you are about to release in the next year or 2, if your dad ever wore the uniform, hit subscribe and give this a like, because it genuinely helps me get this in front of the people who need it. And honestly, this is the kind of video that is worth sending to someone you love, and tell me your province in the comments, because a few of these things behave very differently depending on whether you live in Ontario, Alberta, Quebec, or the Territories. My name is Jake Morrison. Quick and honest introduction. I am not a lawyer. I am not from VAC. And I am not here to sell you a dream. I spent years working inside the world of Canadian veteran benefits, transition programs, and housing policy, and I read the fine print on what Ottawa and the provinces are quietly doing with your file so you do not have to. So, let us walk your service file across all 6 of these lines in order, starting with the one that lands the day you sign your release paperwork, long before most veterans think to ask. But before we do, let me hand you the quick map so you can place yourself, because self-identifying is half the value of this. If you are still serving and your release date is inside the next 12 months, you are crossing line 1 right now. If you released in the last 2 years and have not heard from VAC about housing, you are crossing line 2. If your income has dropped since you hung up the uniform and you are 1 paycheck away from trouble, you are sitting inside line 3, the line most veterans never even read. If you are over 60 and still carrying a service-related disability, you are inside line 4. If you have been on a provincial housing waitlist longer than you served in uniform, you are inside line 5. And if your total annual income is anywhere near the line I will show you at the end, you are sitting right on line 6, the trap that quietly takes housing help back. Find yourself in that list, hold on to it, and as we go through each one, you will know exactly which one is yours right now and which ones are still coming. Line 1, the day you release. Most veterans cross this line believing the day they hand in their discharge paperwork is the day their housing problems magically become someone else's problem. That is a mistake that can leave a medically releasing member without a plan for months. Because between the moment you sign your release and the moment VAC actually decides what you are entitled to, there is a window, sometimes 6 weeks, sometimes 6 months, where you fall off the base housing list, off the shacks and quarters, off every priority list you used to be near the top of, and you are not yet on any civilian list at all. You are floating. And there are 3 things almost nobody tells a releasing member to do in that window. First, before you sign, ask your base orderly room or your transition cell to walk you through every housing benefit card you currently hold, and ask them in writing, because paper protects you. Second, the moment you have your release date, apply to the provincial housing registry in the city you are moving to, even if you think you will be fine, because waitlists in this country run in years. Third, if your release is medical, ask VAC to open a file under the Veterans Wellbeing Act before your last day, because the housing and home life programs that ride on top of that file are far easier to get when they are opened early than when they are begged for later. Here is why this matters so much. It is not automatic. Almost nobody knows to do it, and every month you float without a file is a month you cannot get back. Let me make that real for you. Picture a corporal of 31, call him Mark, wearing a deployment ribbon on his chest, 2 tours under his belt, signing his release on a Tuesday afternoon in Edmonton. He has a job offer lined up in Calgary and a deposit on a basement apartment. He thinks he is set.by Friday his civilian employer pulls the offer. By the end of the month the deposit is gone. By the end of the next month he is crashing on a buddy's couch. By Christmas his name is not on any housing list in either city, and he has not opened a VAC file. That is not a rare story, that is the single most common way a serving member quietly becomes a homeless veteran in this country, a release date signed on the wrong side of a housing conversation. So, the move at line 1 is simple. Do not sign your release paper until a transition advisor has walked you through your housing options in writing. It is the single highest value conversation of your entire career, and it costs you nothing. Line 2, the first 6 months after release. If you released in the last 2 years, you are crossing it about now, and most veterans cross this line believing VAC will simply call them when there is something for them. It will not. The housing and home life programs inside Veterans Affairs Canada do not chase you. They wait for the file. So, the move at line 2 is this. If you have not opened a VAC file, open one this week, even if you think you do not qualify for anything, even if your injury was minor, even if you are working and you feel fine. Because the difference between a veteran who opened a file in their first 6 months and a veteran who opened one 3 years later is not paperwork. It is access. the veteran with the early file shows up on the radar for the new veteran homelessness money we will talk about in a minute. The other one does not. And just as important, when you finally do call VAC, ask specifically about 3 programs: the Housing and Home Life Benefit, the At-Risk Housing Fund, and any case-managed transition help available to releasing members in your province. Do not let the call end on a generic welcome letter. Ask, by name, what housing help exists for you. And if the first person you speak with does not know, ask to be transferred. The branch has staff who specialize in exactly this. Use them. Line 3, the income collapse line. This is the one I most want you to understand because it is invisible. After release, a lot of veterans watch their income drop by 30, sometimes 50%, especially in the first 18 months before a disability decision lands or before a civilian career catches its footing. The provincial housing registries and most rental assistance programs are built off your current annual income. If your income collapses and you do not tell anyone, your old number from when you were still in uniform keeps counting against you. And the result is that you quietly become ineligible for housing help you could have received if you had simply filed a new income number with the right office. She has not updated her file with the Municipal Housing Office. She has not told Service Canada that her income has changed, and so every door she knocks on is reading her file as if she is still earning her military paycheck, which she is not. If Sarah had simply updated her income in those 3 places, the rent assistance, the provincial top-up, and the transition income support would have all behaved differently. Same person, same veteran, different number, different result. The move at line 3 is not a piece of legislation. It is a phone call. Update your income the day it changes, update it where you pay rent, update it with Service Canada, and update it with VAC. And if you have fallen behind, ask anyway, because most of these things can be backdated. Now, before line 4, remember what I told you to stay for. Update your income the day it changes, update it where you pay rent, update it with Service Canada, and update it with VAC. And if you have fallen behind, ask anyway, because most of these things can be backdated. Now, before line 4, remember what I told you to stay for. The Veteran Homelessness Money, the new $1.7 billion housing supply bill, and the income trap that quietly pulls housing help back. We are getting there. But line 4 is worth its own minute because it is the one most veterans miss entirely. Line 4, age 60 and up with a service-related disability. If you are an older veteran, a Korean War vet, a Cold War-era CAF member, an older UN veteran, anyone over 60 and still carrying a service-related disability rating, you are crossing into a quieter part of the staircase, and here is what most of these veterans do not know. The new veteran homelessness funding is layered on top of programs that have existed for decades inside VAC, including the at-risk housing line and the case-managed housing support for older veterans. The budget announced $184.9 million over 4 years starting in 2026 to 27, with about $40 million a year continuing after that, dedicated specifically to preventing and reducing veteran homelessness across Canada. That money flows through Veterans Affairs Canada. It is real, it has just been confirmed in the federal budget, and it is targeted. So, if you are an older veteran who has been quietly making do with a bad apartment for years because you were taught that veterans do not ask for help, please hear me. This new funding is for exactly the kind of situation you are in. Call VAC. Ask for the Housing and Home Life team. Use the words, at-risk housing. And if the first call does not land, call the Veterans Affairs Canada number again. The money is there. The question is whether your name is on the file. Line 5, the provincial build line. This is the big headline number most people heard, and it is the one the housing bill you have been hearing about actually clears. Bill C-26, the Improving Housing Supply Act, just finished its run through the House of Commons and the Senate. It authorizes $1.7 billion in federal payments to the provinces and territories for the specific purpose of removing barriers to residential construction and improving housing supply. Now, here is the part that matters for veterans specifically. Provinces have already been told that part of how they use this money, part of how they report back to Ottawa, has to account for veterans, for releasing members, and for low-income Canadians who have been on waitlists the longest. Provinces do not always make it obvious which units are the veteran ones, which buildings the homeless veteran beds are in, which priority lists the new construction actually moves. That is the trap. So, the move at line 5 is this. When you call your provincial housing registry, ask one specific question. Ask whether any of the new supply under Bill C-26 has a veteran priority category in your region. If the answer is yes, get on the list the same day. If the answer is no, ask why, in writing. Because provinces that took federal housing money are going to be reporting back, and veterans who never asked are veterans who never get counted. You cannot fight for a unit you did not ask for, and Ottawa cannot prove the supply plan is reaching veterans if no one on the list is a veteran. And now, line 6, the trap you have been waiting for. This is the only line on this staircase that can take housing help away instead of giving it. It is built off your total annual net income, and it is the one most careful, well-organized veterans get caught on every single year. Once your net income for the year climbs above the recovery threshold for the benefits in question, the government begins clawing back part of what you were given, 15 cents on every additional dollar, and it very often does not hit you the same year you earned it. It shows up a full year later, after you have already spent the money, as a reduced payment, a smaller housing top-up, or a tax slip you were not expecting. The classic way veterans get caught is a single big year. You take a lump sum IRR withdrawal, you cash out a deferred pay, you take a one-time transition payment and stick it on top of an income year when you did not need it. The line on your tax return shifts over the housing benefit ceiling for a single year, and 12 months later your housing help quietly shrinks and you have no idea why. Let me put a face on it. Picture a sergeant major of 54, call him Dave, who released last year with a healthy IRR. He decides to pull $20,000 out in one go to pay off his truck and redo the bathroom. His normal income is fine, but that one withdrawal pushes his annual net income above the housing benefit and rental assistance ceiling for just that year. He does the truck, he does the bathroom, and forgets all about it. Then, a full year later, his provincial housing top-up quietly shrinks, his VAC case-managed housing support reduces, and he cannot work out why. Nobody sent a letter. The recovery just reached back and took its cut. If Dave had simply split the withdrawal across 2 tax years, $20,000 in December and $10,000 in January, the same money spent on the same truck, he might have stayed under the line both years and kept every dollar of his housing help. That is the whole game with line 6. It is not about earning less. It is about not letting your income spike in any single year if you are anywhere near the thresholds. So, when you take an IRR withdrawal, when you take a deferred pay payout, when you take a lump sum pension bridge, talk to someone before you take it. Veteran-friendly tax preparers understand these lines. Ask them about smoothing income across 2 years before you sign the withdrawal slip, not after the check has already been clawed back. Now let me pull one more thread, because it ties the whole staircase together and answers the question on a lot of your minds. What actually changed now that the bill has passed both the House of Commons and the Senate? 2 things mainly. First, the housing supply line is real money in the bank. Provinces and territories can no longer stall on the argument that the federal government has not actually committed the cash. Bill C-26 has authorized the payments. The provinces now have to draw it down, build with it, and report back. So the next 18 months are when the units veteran families have been promised for a decade are finally going to be shovel in the ground real, or they are going to be quietly the same promise rephrased. Which one happens depends in part on whether veterans in each province ask for them. Second, the veteran homelessness funding inside Budget 2025 is no longer a heading on a press release. It is $184.9 million over 4 years starting in 2026 to 27, and about $40 million a year ongoing after that, sitting inside VAC's mandate to deliver. So if you are a veteran, or a family member, or a caseworker watching this, you can now talk about that funding as something you can point to, not something you can only hope for. That changes the conversation on every housing application you file from here forward. So let me take a breath here and say the honest thing, because being straight with you is the whole point of this channel. I have just handed you a lot, and I know that for some of you the worry is not which line am I near, but I think I am already past most of them, and I have probably missed things. If that is you, hear me clearly. It is very often not too late. VAC housing files can be opened late. Provincial housing applications can be backdated. One-time transition payments can be reviewed. Even the at-risk housing benefit can sometimes be applied for after the fact, going back months, sometimes further. The door is not closed just because you did not know it was open. The worst thing you can do is assume you have missed it and never ask. The best thing you can do is check. And that is exactly why I put all of this, every line, every threshold, the eligibility logic, and the actual phone scripts for VAC and for the provincial housing registries, into one plain English guide written specifically for Canadian veterans. The Canadian Veterans Housing Playbook. I am not going to give you a hard sell, and I am not going to quote you a price here. If this has been useful and you want it all in one place, the link is in the description, and it genuinely helps me keep making these. And I have also put a free one-page version in the description, a simple service file map that shows you at a glance what happens at release, in the first 6 months, on the income collapse, at the provincial build, on the homelessness funding, and where the clawback line sits. Print it, keep it by the phone. So let me bring the whole staircase together, because I know that was a lot to hold. Your service file is quietly walking you across 6 lines. At release, do not sign your paperwork without a housing conversation in writing. In the first 6 months, open your VAC file, ask for housing and home life support, and ask for the at-risk housing line by name. On the income collapse, update your number everywhere the day it changes. For older veterans with a service-related disability, claim the housing and home life support on top of the new homelessness funding, and ask, in writing, where the new units go in your province. On the Bill C-26 build, ask your provincial housing registry whether any of the new supply has a veteran priority category, and get on the list the same day. And on the income line, do not let a single big year quietly claw back housing help you were owed, smooth withdrawals across tax years. Talk to someone before the check clears. That is the map. That is your service record translated into actual housing. And if you want the shortest possible version of what to do this week, whatever your situation, here it is in 3 moves. 1. If you have not opened a VAC file, open one this week, and ask specifically for housing and home life support. 2. If you are anywhere near a provincial housing waitlist, get on it now, and ask whether any of the new Bill C-26 supply in your region has a veteran category, because those lists fill in the order names arrive. 3. If you are planning any kind of big withdrawal from IRR, deferred pay, or pension in the next 12 months, talk to a veteran-friendly tax preparer before you take it, and ask them to model the clawback line for you before you sign anything. Now, this is general education, not personal legal, financial, or veterans benefits advice. I do not know your rank, your release date, your income, your family situation, or your province, and these thresholds, these funding amounts, and these program names are indexed and change every federal budget cycle. The figures here are accurate as of the summer of 2026. Always confirm your own numbers with Veterans Affairs Canada, Service Canada, your provincial housing registry, or a qualified advisor before you make any decision, especially around the income line, where your own file is the whole story. And do me one last favor, because this is genuinely the kind of video that changes a veteran's year. If you know a serving member counting down to a release date, an older vet living in an apartment that no longer fits his needs, or a younger vet crashing on a couch this week because nobody told him about the at-risk housing line, send them this video today. Most veterans have never seen their housing laid out as a simple map like this. You could be the reason someone you love opens a VAC file on time, gets on the right waitlist, or structures a withdrawal so the clawback never touches them. If this cleared things up, hit like and subscribe. I break down exactly what Ottawa, VAC, and the provinces are quietly doing with veteran files every few days in plain English. No fear, no jargon. And tell me down in the comments, which of these 6 lines are you closest to right now? Are you counting down to release? Are you sitting in the first 6 months? Are you somewhere near that income line? I read every single one. Take care of yourselves. Keep that VAC file open.